Thank you. First of all, it's really exciting for me to be here because I think that we work in a new industry. We do a lot of interesting, new, innovative things. But you guys have survived. And I think there's so much that we have to learn from the things that you've done over the years to be able to iterate and evolve. I'm going to jump up here. Okay, is that better? Iterate and evolve, and actually continue to kind of build businesses and move from sector to sector over the years. So this is definitely as much an opportunity for me to learn as it is for me to just share what we see. I took a look at the industries you guys are operating in. Quite honestly, we are looking at them. We are considering them, and venture capital across the world is definitely going after the B2B world, the manufacturing world. Earlier today, as I was driving over, I was chatting about the furniture space. We're in that. We're in a business that does furniture subscription. And we can talk a little bit about how that evolved and came to be. I think what I'm hoping to do from my side at least is share how we've looked at the world. I don't know that all of it will be very relevant to you. Hopefully some of it will spark ideas. I know from our side, typically when we go out and meet people, I find ideas from the most random of industries. And I think when you apply that back to yours, it becomes quite interesting to think about it. And more what we're seeing, at least from innovative companies, disruptive businesses, technology-enabled companies, are that they're borrowing and taking from different places. So that's the background I'll come with. In the introduction, we mentioned some of the stuff I've done here. I thought I'd take a step back as well. We talked a little bit about the entertainment industry. Interestingly, when I was in the US a long time, so I was born in the US, which explains my accent. I lived there till I was 12 and then moved to India. And so when I was there, I started a company in the digital music space. And as I talk through stuff here, I'm going to talk a lot about how the fact that things move very quickly. Things are happening fast. At the same time, I'll start with the exact opposite story. When I first moved out to California in '98, it was a tech boom. It was a bubble. Life was amazing. Things were going great. Today, we talk about companies without profits going public. At that time, they were taking companies without revenues public. So there was such euphoria, such excitement. So in the middle of that, I was young, and I left the company. I was working at an investment bank. I left, and I went and started a digital music venture. At that time, 3G networks were going to be ubiquitous. Companies were investing billions of dollars in this idea of connecting everyone. And so we said, you know what? The cloud hadn't arrived yet. So we said, let's put a digital jukebox in the sky. We'll create your virtual digital living room. And so back then, there were companies like Napster and MP3.com, and these guys were getting sued by the record labels. And we said, all right, what we'll do is we'll align with the record label. I'm telling you this story also to give you a little bit of context of how I've worked within large companies and some of the challenges I saw then. So we said, let's align with the record label. So we picked a great one. We picked Sony Music. We said, this is perfect. Sony as a corporation owns a music label, owns a picture studio, and owns an electronics company. We want to build a virtual digital living room that's going to sit in the sky. We have 3 of the best assets right here in front of us. This is going to be great. So they had set up an incubator. We said, we're in. This is beautiful. Life is good. Now, to give context of how Sony works, over the years, Sony Music and Sony Pictures at that point in time, they recently at that time released a movie called Charlie's Angels. And Charlie's Angels was a Sony Pictures release. And Destiny's Child was a Sony Music artist. So you would think that they could make the 2 things work together nicely and everything would be all right. They could not come to terms on the terms at which the content would be licensed, the music to the pictures side. So therefore, there was no signed agreement. But it still went on. This is how they operated. They couldn't, the left hand and the right hand didn't talk to each other. So when it came to us saying we want to build a digital music platform and integrate it into your devices, and they had an MP3 player. Remember, there was no iPod at that time. So MP3 players and all of this was very new and different, and these guys had a chance to own it. They wanted to ensure that they drove only their, what's called a codec, their format of coding music. And we said, listen, if we're going to launch a service, we can't launch a service and have it be tied only to this. It makes no sense. And the music side said, that makes no sense. The electronic side said, this is the only way we'll do it. The music side said, no, we're not going to license it. It was shocking. One company has all the incentive in the world. About a year later, we shut down. couldn't make it work. It was a good attempt. And the first part of what I was getting to was, we were basically 12 years too early to build Spotify. And so timing has its challenges and issues. And you know, it's not that you can always get it right, and trust me, I've been through failure. But the other side of it was a large company who had all the assets at its disposal ended up losing that opportunity to Apple, who turned around and just said, you know what, we'll take the content at whatever price and we're going to just launch it and we're going to create this ecosystem. You had it, you had the opportunity to win, you were just unwilling to get out of your own way and have the left hand talk to the right hand. And nobody wanted to be, on the music side, the person who gave away the candy store. So as a result, there was this intense fear of, oh my God, what happens if I did the wrong thing? So that was some of my early experiences. We start with this picture, and actually let me, before I get to this, talk a little bit about how I got here. So in 2004, I started to look at India. And again, this is going to be another story of being too early. In 2004, I started to look at India, and I said, you know, if what we've seen, and I was working at a company called IAC in New York, Interactive Corp. We owned businesses like Expedia, Ticketmaster, Match, CitySearch, Evite, Home Shopping Network, some of the largest consumer tech businesses in the US. And my job was to look at launching new businesses. And so as part of this, I said, all right, I believe that there should be interesting opportunities in India. I was somewhat biased. I'd like to come back. I had my family lived here. But I was clear I had no family business per se to come back to. So if I was coming back, I had to figure out something productive to do. And so I started to look at the consumer tech space here. I said, all right, well, it seems like things are moving. Things seem to be happening. China at that point had started to really take off. And if you looked at it, the companies that were taking off in China had all started when PC penetration was at a similar level as what India was in 2004. So the argument was, come now, let's start building, let's go. Now IAC thought interesting, but you know, we've got too many problems everywhere else in the world, we're not ready to take this on. So through a couple of different conversations, I connected with a gentleman by the name of Ram Shriram. Ram was one of the early investors in Google and was on the board of Google. Prior to that, he had sold a company called Junglee to Amazon, and before that had helped build Netscape as a business. And so he clearly had experience in the consumer tech space. And so I presented the idea and thoughts to him and showed him a few of the companies I thought were interesting. One was the team at ClearTrip. Now the team at ClearTrip, by let's say at least today's standards or even 2 years ago standards, would have got probably $5 million in a heartbeat from anybody in this market. However, back then, they couldn't find $50,000 from a single angel investor anywhere. The market was just not ready and not moving, and the background of the team was great, but it just wasn't something people were ready to do. So we started talking and started saying, okay, look, I think it's a good time to come, let's go do this. Now, unfortunately, India being India, it took longer over time to develop than we expected. Ram said yes, he was ready to do it. Kleiner said yes. Kleiner Perkins was the other firm we talked to. They were interested, and so I moved to India basically working with both of them, thinking that over the next 5 years, we're going to see a massive explosion in PC penetration. We're going to see all of this growth in connectivity. All these businesses will start to mature. And actually at that time, people started asking, this was 2005, 2006, they're saying, but why now? What's different? People had tried this in 2002. The argument was, you know, in 2002, you had 2 million internet users. Look at it now, we have 20 million internet users. And this 20 million is going to grow to 100 million so quickly. Look at it, it's about to happen. Everyone said, great, okay. And like I just mentioned, it didn't happen. And it didn't happen as quickly as we expected. Now, these are the natural frustrations of being at the front line, I think, of trying to disrupt something. Some you'll get right, some you'll get wrong. You'll have to be patient, you'll have to wait, and I think when you get there, though, it makes a big difference. So this is a Russian saying, no risk, no champagne. So, you know, I think that the reason we put this up, we recently had a meeting with our investors, and we brought out the context again